Hello and welcome to 10, maybe 12 minutes with your host, me, Taylor Wood. Today we'll be talking to our former president, President Truman, President Eisenhower, and a very young, intelligent teenager, Kristen Waters. We are here first with our former president, President Truman. President Truman, how are you?
Well, I'm good, thanks for asking.
Could you explain to me what the Truman Doctrine is and the impact of it that it had on our country?
My Truman Doctrine basically states that the U.S. will help any country in need that has communism being forced upon them. And the impact of this is that less countries fell to the power of communism.
How did you feel about the crisis in Iran?
Well, the crisis in Iran is when Iran became the new testing ground for the new policy, and the Soviets decided to take action upon when the U.S. tried to stop them. Now, I do believe that the decision I made of sending troops in was very helpful.
Could you explain to me what the Marshall Plan is and the impact of it?
Well, the Marshall Plan is intended to help aid Western Europe after World War II. Now, the impact of this was that they slowly began to recover their economy, and they did not fall to the Soviets' communistic reviews.
Why was the Berlin airlift a significant moment in history?
Well, the significance of a Berlin airlift is that the U.S. shows how much more superior democracy is compared to communism, because communism doesn't even treat its people correctly, doesn't feed them, doesn't even shelter them all the way. So us being the better country supplies them with our own supply.
Could you explain to me what NATO's mission is, and do you believe it will be successful?
Well, the NATO mission is countries coming together in one organization in order to increase their stability and defense and try not to get attacked by Russia. And yes, I do believe it will succeed because we all come together in a time of need.
What were the reasons for entering the Korean War?
Well, the reason why we entered the Korean War was because North Korea was trying to force communism upon South Korea, and restating the Truman Doctrine, we will help any country in need that has communism being forced upon them.
There were reports that you and MacArthur had got into an argument. Could you fill me in on that?
Well, the reason why me and MacArthur got into this very heated argument was because he believes that we should bomb China. Me, thinking it was a very stupid idea, decided to deny his request and say no.
Now, do you still support your decision?
Yes, I highly do support my decision, because if we would have bombed China, we would have lost them as a trading partner and got into a very major war, which would have lost very, very many more lives.
How would you say the capture and the execution of the Rosenbergs impacted our country?
The impact was that it made our country even more scared of spies within our country, community, military, or even government.
How do you feel about Joseph McCarthy's tactics and his downfall?
Well, I highly disagree with Mr. McCarthy's tactics, because he developed false evidence on there being other communistic spies within our country, which led to scaring our population even more. In the end, people found out about Mr. McCarthy's false evidence and stopped believing him, which ultimately led to his downfall.
Truman, why did you decide not to run for re-election?
Well, the reason I didn't run for second term is because I believe I'm getting too old. I'm 68 and I already served nearly 8 years as a president. And plus, me and my wife would like to reside back to our hometown in Missouri.
Do you feel that your presidency was a success?
Yes, I ultimately do believe that my presidency was a success. I helped win World War II, and I prevented McCarthy from bombing China.
Thank you, former President Truman. It was a pleasure having you on our show. Now we will talk to our president, President Eisenhower. Hi, President Eisenhower. How are you?
Well, I'm very well. Thanks for asking. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Could you explain to me what the philosophy behind the more bang for your buck and brinkmanship was?
Basically, we cannot defend our nation in a way which will exhaust our economy. We have to be ready to use atomic weapons in all forms when we're defending our nation, because it's too expensive to build up a large army, pay for the large army. It's a lot more effective and a lot less expensive if we use atomic weapons when defending our nation, because we want to show communist nations why democracy is superior to communism by having a strong economy and not becoming weak in any way. And I think using atomic weapons over a large army will largely show that. And brinkmanship is about being willing to go to the brink of war in order to make an aggressive nation submit to our requests and stop invading another country or doing whatever it is that we need to get involved with that nation.
Were you happy with the results of the Korean War?
Ultimately, I think the war was too costly, and I'm just glad it's over, to be honest. But in the end, I am satisfied with the result of the war, because we set out what our foreign policy is aiming to do, which is contain communism and prevent it from spreading, and we did just that. We prevented Northern Korea from spreading communism to South Korea. So I do think it was a success. Yes, I would have liked to have come out of the war with the entire nation of Korea being a free democracy, but we did what we could.
How did you feel when you heard about Sputnik?
Well, quite frankly, I was a little shocked and a little disappointed to learn that they had ICBMs and were able to develop the Sputnik. But we have responded. We created a new organization known as NASA, which is a space organization, and we've passed the NDEA, which will fund science and math education in our schools and help us develop new space technology and, in the end, hopefully get to the moon before Russia.
How do you think the Taiwan crisis and the Suez crisis impacted our country?
Well, after the Taiwan crisis, where China was trying to invade islands off of Taiwan and make them communist, and we had to step in and stop them and keep them free nations, free islands. And then the Suez Canal crisis, where Russia was trying to bomb Britain and France after they invaded Egypt to prevent them from turning communist, and we had to step in and stop Russia. After all that, I think we learned that we have to convert to using covert operations that will be conducted by the CIA in order to prevent future communist revolutions like these two that happen.
Why did the government feel it was necessary to develop the CIA?
Well, we're not going to be able to use brinkmanship in every situation. We need to be able to use covert operations to stop communist revolutions in other countries before they even get started. We don't want to wind up in the future with a very valuable nation becoming communist and we never even knew about it. We need to have these operations so that nothing like that happens, and we can keep all of our valuable trading nations and allies free and democratic and not communist.
Could you explain to me what the Eisenhower Doctrine is?
With the Eisenhower Doctrine, I had Congress authorize the use of military force in the Middle East in order to help them resist communism.
How did the U-2 incident impact U.S. and the Soviet relations?
Well, to start off, our relations with the Soviet Union have been very weak, and if anything, this situation just made it worse. However, they were wrong to assume that this was a spy plane. It was not. It was just a weather plane that we were testing in the area, and it simply went off course, and it's unfortunate that that happened, but we wish that the Soviet Union did not think that this was a spy plane.
What recent medical advancements would you say impacted the U.S. the most?
Well, I believe that the development of CPR is a huge medical advancement because it can be used for people who suffer from heart attacks and it can bring them back to life. And I see this being used in the future and saving millions of other lives. Also, I believe the development of cancer treatments such as chemotherapy and radiation are a huge medical advancement because this can be used to ultimately cure people who have cancer and save millions of lives.
How will the Federal Highway Act impact our country?
Well, this act is going to be the largest public works project in history, putting thousands of people to work, building over 40,000 miles of interstate highways in our country, which will largely help with shipping, trading all around our country, which ultimately will boost our economy. And also, we're going to build the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway, which will connect the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean and ultimately help our country with international trading. And also may I add that the construction of this Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway, that I'll have been the first president to successfully reach an agreement with Canada to build this seaway, while 3 of my predecessors have failed to do so in the past.
Overall, do you feel your presidency has been a success?
Well, overall, if I had to give my presidency a grade, I'd give it about a B-, just because, yes, we prevented war with Russia and we contained communism, but I can't say that I've set a foundation for a lasting peace in the future. I believe that there's still going to be a lot of conflicts with Russia and the spread of communism, and I would have liked to set a stronger foundation to prevent this.
Thank you so much, President Eisenhower. It was a pleasure having you on our show. And we'll be right back with 10 to maybe 12 minutes. Hello and welcome back to 10 maybe 12 minutes. We are here with our very young, bright teenager, Kristen Walter. Kristen Walter, how are you? Kristen?
Oh, I'm good, thank you. It's great to be here.
Oh, it's a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Now, Kristen, how would you say the GI Bills impacted our economy?
Well, a lot of my friends who went into the Army, now that they're back, the GI Bill has let them go to college for free, and now they can get great jobs that help them make more money for our country. So I think it's a great thing for our country's economy.
What is it like living in the suburbs?
Well, in my neighborhood, there's always children running around. They're always having a great time. Everyone's lawn is always mowed. It's just perfect. But like in the house, there's a little bit of problem with alcohol, but none of the neighbors know, and they never will find out. My parents are really good at hiding it.
How has the growth of the suburbia impacted our country?
I think suburbia in America has brought Americans closer together and way more family-oriented.
How has TV impacted our society?
Well, TV has given us a lot more entertainment, and now I can keep in touch with what's going on in the country and even the world with our daily news. And now there's a lot more advertising. Like, I got a vacuum cleaner. It's just awesome. Me and my family sit around the TV every Sunday night.
Now, what are some of your favorite TV
Of course,
shows to
it's
watch?
I Love Lucy and Leave It to Beaver, my favorite shows.
How would you say rock and roll impacted our society?
Well, I mean, it's brought a lot of excitement into my life, and it's made a lot of more teenagers open, like, about sex. And it's made a lot of them very rebellious. Not me, of course.
Now, who would you say one of your favorite artists is?
Of course, it's Elvis Presley, like, king of rock and roll, but I'm not allowed to listen to him, so you can't tell my mom.
Could you explain to me what the beat movement is and how you feel about it?
The beat movement is when all the stereotypes clash. Like, you would think the juveniles would listen to the rock and roll, and of course they did, but look at me, I'm a square. I listen to rock and roll, yet I still look like I go to church every Sunday, and I do.
How has the increased number of African American entertainers impacted race relations in the U.S.?
I believe that racism has declined because of the African American performers in our country, because we've started to show a lot more respect for the talents that they have, but I still feel like there's a strong racism in our country.
Could you describe to me your feelings after the Brown versus Board verdict?
I'm actually okay with the Brown versus Board verdict because I don't have a problem with colored people, and I'm kind of happy that we all get an equal education now.
How will America remember Rosa Parks?
I believe people will remember Rosa Parks by being very brave and standing for what she believes in, actually sitting for what she believed in. And then they'll also remember her by being a key figure in the civil rights movement.
Describe your feelings when you saw the Little Rock Nine enter school.
I remember Little Rock 9. When the children entered the school, there was like not only students but parents who were spitting at them, throwing stuff at them, calling them the N-word. It was truly disgusting to see these children treated such a way because I do not have a problem with colored people.
How has the Red Scare impacted society and your life in particular?
Well, the Red Scare. I have plenty of drills for this. In school, we all are like have to go under our desk when a siren goes off and keep our hands over our heads until the sirens stop. And at home, we have fallout shelters. There's 4 beds in there, canned goods and water. But everybody always walks around like we're all so paranoid, like the Russians can attack at any moment.
Some say that there has been a push towards social conformity. Do you agree?
I do believe there is a push because in my neighborhood, all the families try to act and look the same. And if you're like different, like if your child's different, then you're kind of shunned from society. So I kind of really do agree with that.
How do you explain the recent concern over juvenile delinquency?
The recent concern over juvenile delinquency has to be due to social conformity. These are the children who don't want to follow the rules and they don't want to be like everybody else. They want to be their own person. But the adults are really having a strong problem with that because it's changing society in their eyes.
Well, thank you so much, Kristen, for coming on our show.
Of course.
It's a pleasure having you. Well, guys, that concludes our show. Thank you and have a great night.
Stay classy, Pensacola.